This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Maximus. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, don't overthink it when you're planning for your retirement.
The L funds are intended to kind of help you just make one decision, and it will automatically move you as you approach retirement into those safer investments.
Jim Kaplan of the TSP on FedGov Today in just a moment. Uniting program strategy, advanced technology, process, and execution for a more efficient government. That's Maximus. Every program, every service, every time. That's innovation forward. Learn more at maximus.com/federal. The Thrift Savings Plan is celebrating a milestone this month. That milestone is around its life cycle, or L funds. Jim Kaplan's Director of External Affairs, the Federal Retirement Thrift Investment Board. Jim, welcome. It's great to talk to you again. The big number for the L fund is what, and how did you get there? Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Francis. Well, the nice thing is that we've noticed that about 25% now participant allocations are in an L fund, which means that folks that are putting their money in, fully a quarter of those funds are going into these life cycle funds with a date that's intended to help them plan and transition towards their retirement. And so it starts when you're young, when the new folks coming out are 18 in the service and in federal service. It's a little bit more aligned towards the markets. And as every quarter slowly shifts, so that as you approach 65, it's moving more and more into our G fund and safer investments. And this became the default a few years back and has now just gotten to that point where almost as many people every month are putting money into the L fund as are putting into the G fund. And so it's really just kind of shown the popularity and the growth and use of this type of service.
Do you have a sense, or do you have data on how many people are going into one of the L funds as a default and maybe moving to another L fund, or going to distribution, or going to allocations in the individual funds, or any kind of sense of how fluid that is, Jim?
So the L fund is now the default fund when you create an account in the TSP. Whether you're just newly enlisted in the military or just beginning your federal service, that L fund based on your date of birth is your default. People do move around a little bit more, and there are actually public reports out there of folks who say maybe you should be in your L fund plus 5 years or 10 years if you think you're going to live a little bit longer. I don't know that we have the data on how many folks are doing that within the TSP. It's something I think it's worth us taking a look at. But it really is just that we've been providing this option now for a number of years, and it really has become adopted across our participant and beneficiary options.
Something I would be interested to learn about sometime that we talk in the future too is what group of people, if there is one still, has a portion of their portfolio in the L funds and a portion in the other funds. That was something I remember when the L funds first rolled out from you all a number of years ago. There was a little bit of confusion about what the purpose of the L funds was and how allocation and so on worked. And so it would be curious to see whether folks now, through the work that I know that the TSP has done and just on their own educational basis, have figured out that having money in the G fund and then also money in an L fund may not be what's going to help them reach their goals.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, the thing to keep in mind is that the L fund is already a mixture of our 5 funds. There's nothing new in the L fund. So if you have an L fund and you're fairly young and it's a little bit more towards the C, S, and I indexes and not so much for the bond and the treasury fund, and you then make a part of your portion being even more there, then you're going to have less safety. So really, folks should take a look at the L fund and see how those allocations change over the years. But it's already giving them the mix of those 5 funds that our professionals and our experts and our advisors have suggested are the optimum for theirs. Now, we don't give advice, and as any participant can make the decision that's right for them, but the L funds are intended to kind of help you just make one decision, and it will automatically move you as you approach retirement into those safer investments.
Another item you told me about before we went on the air was the fact that you did have a segment of participants that you would send money to, and the money would come back for whatever reason, and you're making some changes in that area. What's the challenge you're trying to address there, Jim, and how are you going about addressing it?
Sure. This is, as we've talked about in the past, we're constantly looking at what our participants need and how we can better support them. And so the TSP makes about 400,000 payments every month to our participants. And 99.95% of those go through, either the check is delivered or the electronic payment goes through fine. It's really that half of 1% that bounces back. Either they've misentered their account number, or they've switched banks, or they've changed their address, and that's lost. It used to be we would wait for them to notice and to contact us. But we started in May saying, you know what, when we see that a check has been bounced back, either that was returned for a faulty address or the bank denied acceptance of that transfer, let's reach out to them directly. And we have good contact information for 98% of our participants. And so we were successful in reaching out to 98% of them and letting them know you need to re-enter your bank account, give us an updated address, do whatever action that is they need to take. And the result was that in the last month, we went from it taking about 22 days for the average person to get a reissued check to 12 days. So we've nearly halved the time it's taken us to address those few errors and get them resolved for our participants. And it's all because we're taking that initial step ourselves in trying to find ways to support them and make that a smoother process.
The lesson there, I guess, is everybody should go into their TSP accounts and make sure all their contact info is updated, just in case you guys ever need to get a hold of them.
Absolutely. We put out a notice. We call it kind of your spring cleaning. And when you're doing everything every spring, or for me, it's every year on my birthday, go look at your financial records, make sure you've designated your beneficiary, you've updated your bank accounts, and that everything, your phone number and your emails are accurate. One of the things we find for our military service members is that they will travel overseas and then try and reach into their account, and they've left their cell phone at home, or they bought a local phone number, and that's not in their account. And then when they try and access it, we need to mail them a PIN. But that mail goes to their family address back in the States and has to be forwarded out there. And so especially if you're going to be traveling or moving with either your service or your job or just for your personal reasons, you want to make sure that you've kept your information up to date.
All right. What else is on the agenda for the summer for the TSP, Jim? Anything else that people should know about?
No, we've talked about that transition that's happening to the L funds with the new L fund standing up. I will say, as we approach the 4th of July, one nice figure I saw in our recent announcement was that 90% of our military personnel in the blended retirement system now are getting their full match, which is an all-time high for us. And so it's good as we think of our Independence Day to realize that those who are serving us in the military are making sure that they are getting the full match that they are entitled to so that they can plan for their retirement. And of course, our first members are they're maintained at 88.5%, which is also at a high level for us. So we're just glad that people are participating and getting the benefits that they've earned and deserve.
Happy Independence Day to you, Jim. Cook something up for me on the grill, okay?
Hey, there's a lot of hot dogs get eaten, but it's a way to just remember that all of those of us who serve, whether it's in government, in the military, or with family members, we're doing it for a good cause.
Appreciate you being on as always. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Francis.
You can read more about the TSP on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. The Central Intelligence Agency is moving out of the planning phase toward deployment of artificial intelligence. It's making AI models available all over the organization. The Chief Information Officer at CIA, Linnea Jones, will tell you how those models work and who's using them on the latest edition of FedGov Today TV. You can watch it on demand anytime at fedgovtoday.com and on the FedGov Today YouTube channel. FedGov Today will observe the Independence Day holiday this Thursday, so the next FedGov Today podcast is coming next Tuesday. You can listen to that show and every FedGov Today podcast anytime you want on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on demand at fedgovtoday.com. I'm Francis Rose. Thanks very much for listening.